Hello, friends. This is Seth Itzkan of Soil4Climate. And let me just get the speaker view here. Okay. This is Seth Itzkan of Soil4Climate. I hope you all are doing very well. And um, welcome today to our webinar with Aria McLauchlan, the co-founder and executive director of LandCorp. LandCorp is perhaps the leading organization in the country that is focusing on healthy soil legislation at the federal level, and they've been doing exemplary work in that regard. And they have a bill tracker that follows the legislation, and they work on both sides of the not both sides of the aisle. Apologies. Healthy soil legislation is a bicameral issue. There's a common ground here for all interested parties. And so we see this as a wonderful opportunity to create unity, both for environmental reasons and social reasons and economic reasons. And so we're really happy to have Aria here. And just very briefly, Soil4Climate, our organization, is also a nonprofit like LandCorp, and we focus on elevating the science, policies, and practices of soil restoration. And so in the space of policy, then obviously Aria McLauchlan of LandCorp is perhaps the best spokesperson in that space. So we're very happy to have her here. Aria, it's my pleasure to introduce you. Why don't you make a few words of introduction yourself, and also let me introduce my colleague, Carl Tiedemann, who is the co-founder of Soil4Climate. All right, Aria, the floor is yours.
Oh, goodness. Well, thank you so much, Seth. Those are very generous and kind words to live up to, but it's a pleasure to be here with the two of you and everyone listening in. This is a great community. So my name again is Aria McLauchlan. I had the pleasure of co-founding this organization with my partner, Harley Cross, back in, I guess we got started in earnest on this work in early 2017, and have, I would say, been in the soil health movement for maybe a year or so, year or two longer than that. So approaching, like Soil4Climate, our sort of 10 years of being the girl in the room talking about dirt over dinner, and all things soil health policy. So yes, it's a pleasure to be here. LandCorp as an organization has a mission to advance soil health policies and programs that create value for farmers, businesses, and communities. And then even more specifically, we do have a focus here in the United States. And we try to think about ways to better make the economic case for soil health, and always love to get into that conversation, as well as trying to advance specific new economic incentives and missing infrastructure that can support producers here in either adopting and maintaining these practices or transitioning, especially if folks are in more sort of conventional or industrial systems where there might be an interest in transitioning to or increasing their adoption of soil health practices. We try to find the policies and incentives that can make that as practical and profitable a matter as possible. So it's a pleasure to be here.
So Aria, well, first of all, let me say to people who are watching, if you're new to Zoom, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and so you can ask a question in there. Of course, there's also the chat space, and I'll be monitoring both. But if you have a specific question that can be worded succinctly in a sentence or so, put it in the Q&A area. Aria, as you know, I have your bill tracker, already ready to be shown. And if you want to, we can go right to that, or you can just talk more generally about healthy soil legislation at the federal level, and then we can drill down to specifics. Again, I'll let you drive the conversation.
Sure. Well, maybe we can say a few words generally. For us at Landcore, soil health is both an issue, but it's also, I think, a choice of framing and a understanding that with soil as sort of a literal common ground. There's not a person in the country who doesn't eat and therefore have inherently some connection to agriculture. So for us, soil health is a really intentional and strategic way to make a really big difference in the lives, first and foremost, of farmers and ranchers who, we owe so much in the way that they steward the land and grow the food and fiber and in many cases fuel that so many of us use and rely on. And over the years now, we've also had sort of the opportunity to see that soil health indeed can really be a way to work with members on both sides of the aisle, so to speak, with both or with any really political party. And so that I think sometimes we can look at politics and policy and see the gridlock in Washington or just maybe have skepticism about the policy process being slow or cumbersome. And I think there's really a sort of a great privilege and opportunity in focusing on soil health policy because we have had the experience that you really can have some practical conversations with all sorts of folks. And that also means working with a wide range of producers, farmers, and ranchers all across the country who are growing different crops, raising different livestock, working in very different sort of climates and conditions and contexts, but soil health principles, as many of you all know, in this community have a way of reaching folks wherever they are. So we find that extends to the legislative process as well. And then let's see, I guess maybe for those who don't know, agriculture or food and agriculture policy in the US has predominantly historically been sort of governed by one big bill called the Farm Bill, which is meant to pass every 5 years or so. There have been some unfortunate delays with the Farm Bill that's was supposed to have passed a couple of years ago, and that has gotten kicked down the line a little bit. For those who are here in the US, I think I want to actually make a sort of call and reminder that even though that has gotten a little bit swept up in political headwinds, that it's still a really important thing to push for. The Farm Bill, because of the way that it was designed, really does bring together interests across food and nutrition. So there's a big portion of the bill that focuses on getting food to American families in the form of nutrition programs and what we call SNAP. So that represents a huge number of just Americans in supporting those folks and getting food, but then all of the farm programs as well. So our commodity subsidy payments to our commodity growers, crop insurance, which is a huge safety net and something I'd love to chat a little bit more about if we have time, because soil health has a wonderful way of being a sort of risk reducing tool on farms and ranches, and so many other programs, including our conservation programs, the programs that help directly support farmers and ranchers and private landowners implementing conservation practices, including soil health practices like cover crops or mobile fencing or what have you on their land. So much of that infrastructure comes from the Farm Bill. So that's still overall still a process and a bill to watch. And then, yeah, Carl, go ahead.
When you mentioned cover crops, one of the things that I've learned as I've learned more about how to rapidly restore soil is the importance of highly diverse cover crops. And in general, I don't see language when people talk about cover crops. Very often it seems it's a monoculture or maybe one or two different types of plants. Is there growing awareness or any regulatory action or incentives to encourage farmers to grow highly diverse cover crops?
I think that's a good question. I think it's still, I would be concerned, frankly, about any sort of regulatory measure that required multiple species of cover crops because even though I think you have an inkling that more diversity is often going to yield better results. I think in general we try to advocate for policy approaches that really allow context first and foremost. Sort of voluntary, locally led measures and practices that are sort of best for the individual farmer or rancher to determine. So with that in mind, I think that we are starting to see more incentives for cover crops. Certainly, that's a practice that has really, I think, been increased in recognition. Starting to see some more incentives both at the state and the federal level, like a sort of $5 an acre payment for implementing cover crops. And then also some increased conversation about removing barriers. So more recently, the USDA addressed an issue where there was a lack of flexibility around when cover crops had to be terminated, and there was a rule that was removed that made sure that farmers weren't in infringement of their crop insurance policies, because previously it said sort of like, if you don't terminate these by a certain amount of time, then you're going to be invalid in your crop insurance policy, which is a really important risk management tool. So there are some little sort of like inadvertent barriers that have been in place. I think that there are still a few left, but there's, I would say, a lot more education and understanding among policymakers about the ways that we want to remove those barriers so farmers can just be innovative and do what is best for them year to year.
Is some of the funding that you're lobbying for, does it include money for education of farmers? And I'm thinking more that would be the place to make sure that farmers are informed about the diversity of cover crops, not to require them to grow specific cover crops or something like that, but even to make them aware of it. And along those lines, something that Seth and I see all the time are references to rotational grazing. Even though we know rotational is an ancient practice, it's not effective in all situations, and that better managed grazing or planned grazing is necessary. So I'm concerned about language calling for rotational grazing when I don't think that goes far enough. And I'm wondering if you can say what sort of language are you seeing? Do you see more, for example, introduction of terms such as managed grazing or planned grazing as compared to rotational? All right, thank you.
Yeah. Taking the last one first, we are starting to see more mention of managed grazing in bills, which I think is really terrific, because there is, many of the folks will know that there's a, sort of an outdated idea about grazing being in opposition to conservation goals. And of course, this community understands that really is quite the opposite if done carefully. So I'm really pleased with the uptick. And I think even if you were to look in our bill tracker, which Seth, maybe we can sort of shift over to now, just searching for the word grazing, you'll start to see quite a few different mentions of sometimes rotational grazing, Carl, but other times managed or regenerative grazing, or just sort of resource conserving practices like managed grazing. So that's encouraging. And then I think your other question about farmer education and technical assistance, that absolutely is something that we've heard from farmers over and over again over the last couple of years, that more education, more technical assistance. There's a newly reintroduced bill called the Farmer to Farmer Education Act, which would provide funding for more sort of peer-to-peer learning opportunities, and for USDA to enter into what they call cooperative agreements with organizations that have experience delivering technical assistance. And I think, we certainly tend to hear that farmers and ranchers learn best when they can be in those sort of peer-to-peer settings. So we definitely want to see more of that included in the Farm Bill. And, I think also just would encourage different arms of USDA to be thinking about how they can either be partnering with organizations or more directly, and maybe even say virtually, delivering more education services to farmers, because we know that they're really hungry for more of this information.
Aria, I have shared the bill tracker website. Do you see it on your screen? Just want to get confirmation here.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
So
do you want me to scroll or search, or why don't you sort of
sure, you can
direct me
scroll
through
just
here?
a smidge, but I can just start by saying, this, you might have seen at the top there, it said this is a federal soil health bill tracker, but we are doing our best to track any bill that has been introduced into the US Congress that would have some impact on soil health and resilience. And so it actually includes kind of a wider range of topics, including education and technical assistance. This Farmer to Farmer Education Act at the top there is something that I've mentioned. There are bills related to grazing, to crop insurance, to research, to climate and carbon sequestration. So if you scroll down on the left, you can, oh yes, or look.
I'm going to do a search on grazing. Is that all right?
Yes. I know that's a topic we're interested in. Yeah, so that you can see there are a few different bills. We really do our best to present this information in a educational and nonpartisan way. So the focus is on soil health and the ways that that would impact. And we also understand sometimes that even the different how a bill is implemented at the agency, and then of course how any given producer is implementing practices on their land can really, sort of results may vary depending on how things are implemented. So we want to keep this as sort of a neutral and educational and clear resource for folks as possible. It might also be worth mentioning that here in the US, the vast majority of these bills on agriculture or soil health are what we call marker bills. So they are bills that are introduced into Congress. They have the opportunity to, write language, and they're introduced and sponsored and co-sponsored by different members of Congress, and then different organizations have the opportunity to endorse those bills. But rarely are these bills passed as standalone legislation. These are all sort of earmarked as bills then that would go into the larger sausage that is the Farm Bill, or occasionally into a might inform an appropriations or spending or budget reconciliation bill.
What did you say they were called again? What was this sort of the generic shop term for them?
Marker bills.
Marker bills.
Yeah. And you'll have to
Interesting.
stop me if I throw out any jargon without explaining it. But
Right. And that just means something that is almost meant to be, what do you call those things when you're brainstorming? Just sort of put it out there and kind of see what happens.
yeah, it offers language for the record, so it's sort of there officially. It makes it easier to include these ideas into the final sort of, let's say for the Farm Bill, into the Farm Bill process. Any bill that's already been introduced as a marker bill has a much better shot of being included in the sort of final omnibus draft of a Farm Bill. It's also a way for members of Congress to signal their priorities and, to articulate that they understand certain issues and have been listening to their constituents. So, this is admittedly sort of dense repository of information, but I think it actually really reflects really well on the movement in terms of the sheer number of bills. We're talking hundreds of bills that were introduced in the previous Congress, like over the previous 2 years, that would have some impact on soil health and resilience. I think it was maybe like 80 or so of those bills that were bipartisan. So really, I know that again that sometimes there can be some skepticism with how things look in Washington, or in any say state legislature on any given day. There, politics can be like, oh, stay away sort of area, but truly just the number of bills and the education that folks, including members of the community, have done to let either businesses or policymakers know why this issue is important and why it has so many benefits. I do think that this bill tracker is a sort of a testament to that, because there is such specificity and just a lot of good ideas in here. So yeah, it's a great marker of progress.
It's awesome. I'm very impressed with this. And um, what I want to ask about it. Oh, yes. So you said that there were 80 bipartisan bills related to soil health of some sort in the last, you're saying in the last farm bill,
In the last Congress. Well,
2018?
let's actually look.
You want to drive
We
down a
can do
little
this
bit?
together.
Yeah.
Let's look at this Congress. So, Seth, if you scroll down on your left, we're looking on the left-hand bar, and we want to click on see where the second section of party support.
Yeah.
So we want to check that bipartisan box.
Ooh, very
And
good.
then if you
Very
scroll
good.
all the way to down to the bottom of the list of bills, oh, actually, sorry, let's do one more thing. Scroll up a little bit, and in Congress, let's click 119th. So that's actually this Congress. That's everything since the beginning of
Oh,
this year.
very good. Very good.
And
Okay.
then now, oh, that only shows two, the one bill. All right, that was very good. Maybe uncheck the core box at the top here.
Oh, I see core. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, I'm impressed with how fast it is. I mean, I mean, I clicking it and then the screen refreshes immediately. Okay. Very good.
Yeah, and so, you can play around with this and do different kinds of searchers. We still have a couple of bills that are in our draft tracker that have not been published live yet. So I think it'll be we have an alert that comes out about once a quarter that folks can sign up for to receive sort of a digest and update on the bills that we've been publishing and any sort of trends that we're noticing. So folks are welcome to sign up to that. I see also that Valerie has a question in the chat, which is like, so which bills are possible and who should we contact? It's probably a little hard to say for sure, which bills might make it. But in general, bills that are bipartisan that have both support from Democrats and Republicans is definitely a really strong start. I know that many organizations, whether it's in farming or in conservation or in grazing, work really hard to make sure that the ideas that they support and that they try to get introduced have bipartisan support for that reason. So that's definitely a good start. And then I would say, if you're based in the U.S. or if you have a business interests, a farm or ranch in the U.S. Wherever whatever state you're in, you can find your congressional representative or senator and contact those folks. And for those of us working on soil health policy, we have a tendency to focus on the members of Congress who are on both the House and Senate agriculture committees, because those are the folks that do the most work on the legislation itself. But truly, as I said at the beginning, because we all eat, we all have an interest and some connection to the land, even if it doesn't necessarily feel like it if you're living in a city or not directly working on the land. Letting members know that you're interested in this topic in general, that you think that it has a real ability to bring urban and rural folks together and red and blue together. That strong support for soil health, that strong support for a bipartisan farm bill, all of that can really go a long way. So yeah, definitely reach out to your representatives if you can. And you can actually, there's a little a way to maybe one other feature, Seth,
Yep.
if you scroll up a smidge.
Yep.
Up rather than down. There's actually at the very top there's the bills tab that we're on, and then there's that legislators tab. And that's a way that you can either sort through different representatives, or you can specifically search for your member of Congress, and then you kind of get a legislator's profile showing all of the bills that are in our tracker that your representative has sponsored or co-sponsored. So that's a fun way to get a sense of whether or not folks are already sort of switched on to this issue or not.
I just want to say, just looking at this, oh, it's interesting. Yeah, very nice interface. I was actually in the web design business for a while, and I have to say this is a very good application. Very intuitive, very quick, great user interface. Like regardless of the content, it's very well designed, and excellent content too. But just looking at this, just looking at this screen, look at the fairly even distribution of, red and blue, legislative representation here.
Yeah.
Just visually, you see the red and the blue. There's no party which appears to dominate this space, which is perfect. This is exactly the whole point. And that it's a learning moment. I mean, even for me, I've been in this field all these years. This is the first time I've looked at this particular screen on your bill tracker page and just visually seeing the red and the blue there of almost equal distribution really, I think, speaks to the point of how this is a unifying topic. And of course, the movie Common Ground that just came out, there's this phrase, common ground for a common good. I'm not sure if maybe Gabe Brown came up with that phrase or who came up with it, but it just seems to make perfect sense, and you see it here. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that for a minute. That is, if you could speak to, without being on any side of the aisle, nonetheless speak to why it is appealing to both sides of the aisle. And, just from my own experience, we are Soil for Climate is how we started, but the reality, for better or worse, is that climate is not necessarily a topic that has a lot of leverage on both sides of the aisle. However, things like food security are, um, you know, crop security, drought and flood resilience, social equity, good income for producers in rural areas. Those are the issues that they don't necessarily have to have anything to do with climate, but they're still about soil. So our own narrative has been changing. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that from your point of view as to navigating the different sides of the aisle and the sort of the unifying language that everyone can agree on. And then I'll stop the share.
Yeah, absolutely, Seth. I mean, I think you raised a bunch of great points there in terms of the way that it really the soil itself and the issue of soil health touches us all. But yeah, I think that there's a number of wonderful ways in, right now, some folks might be seeing that there's quite a bit of conversation that's been spurred by this, what folks are calling the Make America Healthy Again movement, kind of spearheaded by Secretary Kennedy, or RFK Jr. For short, who's now serving as the head of the Department of Health and Human Services, and that is the secretary's interest in soil health and regenerative agriculture, while serving in a very Republican administration, is a really sort of, I think, interesting example of how soil health really is being looked at by a wide range of folks who might otherwise have sort of different political beliefs. So, and that particular movement really has gotten a tremendous amount of traction, I think, to a lot of folks' surprise. And some of the sort of legislation that's coming out of that movement is, I think, at least initially, a little more focused on sort of food safety bills in terms of like food dyes. And there's also been some traction and collaboration with USDA, Department of Agriculture, and Health and Human Services, in terms of USDA allowing some states to waive a restriction. So now we'll be seeing some states that are removing, say, sugary snacks from SNAP nutrition benefits and things like that. So that's kind of where some of that policy has started. But I think really a bunch of the root of that movement was a focus on soil health and regenerative agriculture. And there are quite a lot of opportunities to advance soil health in, I think, really meaningful ways, like including soil health in, say, the US dietary guidelines, would be a tremendous win for all Americans, and I think would even have ripples for citizens around the world in terms of noting our food production systems, the methods that we use in food production, and soil health as a real sort of determinant of health, a healthier soil microbiome leading to a healthier human gut microbiome, and so on and so on, more uptake of nutrients from the soil into the plants, and so on. So there's a lot there. Centering soil health and local, and a sort of regenerative food in federal procurement would also have a tremendous benefit. So I think that's a clear example of the progress that can be made, and just a reminder to all of us to sort of stay open. And then one other sort of issue or response to that issue that's been interesting to track with the recently released MAHA Commission report, which was focused on causes of chronic disease in children. There, was quite a bit of, I would say, backlash and concern from more conventional agriculture groups based on that report. But even as recently as today, I heard Senator Roger Marshall from Kansas talking about, well, maybe one way that agriculture and the MAHA movement can kind of work together is to focus on soil health. And so it just is really, really interesting to see all of those ways. And then maybe on the other side of things, there are some wonderful Democrats on the Ag Committee who have some really smart, salient policies that they've been putting forward. But as some folks in this country know, Democrats haven't always been known or maybe have gotten further away from being champions of and feeling like they're connected to rural communities. So in those ways, I think, which isn't to say that Dems haven't had some smart policy on food and ag, but showing an interest in soil health, getting involved in the profitability and resilience of farmers and ranchers in their backyards, beyond sort of the food that's on our plates in our cities, is a wonderful way I think, for them to get further involved as well. So yeah, just a lot of opportunity.
Right. And how does this, speaking about that, how do we focus specifically on the producer? The producer who is in corn or soy, let's say, or in commercial livestock agriculture, they're not trying to be political. They're just trying to make a living. And no one wakes up and says, "Oh, I really want to plow my soil to death and create erosion," or, "Oh, I really want to spray all these chemicals." Like, that's not the incentive. The incentive is that they want to work the land, and produce food and make a living. So, so how can we work across the aisle so that it's clear that the farmer or the rancher, the producer, is the person that we're interested in? We're not trying to push down either a corporate agenda that you have to produce so many tons of XYZ product, or you have to follow this protocol to get crop insurance, or you have to improve your soil carbon by a certain amount. So it's not mandates coming from above, either corporate or environmental, but we're trying to say, look, we're interested in your welfare. That is the producer. We're interested in your pocketbook and in literally the health of your family. Now, now the reality is healthy soil means you have to stop killing the soil. So you are going to have to stop doing the regular plowing. You are going to have to stop doing the regular monoculture. You are going to have to stop doing the intense chemical regimen. So there will need to be more different types of crops. There will need to be some type of animal integration. And my understanding is that when producers make this transition, there is a period where their production drops before then it sort of recovers. And I know that Land Corps is interested in market solutions. It's all over the Land Corps website, market solutions. So give us some guidance in terms of how we can do that, how we can get market solutions for the producer so they're not caught up in an environmental or a political discussion. They're just doing what they want to do, which is work on the land and get a fair profit for what they're producing.
Yeah, thanks, Seth. I mean, I do think that a lot of that is really the right sort of line of questioning and the right place to start with, how to support the producer, who's just really our heroes in so many ways. Yeah, I think for us, because we are, as I said at the outset, really interested in A, making a good economic case, and then B, I think finding ways to create better, smarter economic incentives that meet producers where they're at, recognizing that, we can, as you've said, sort of suggest that some practices might be more helpful in building a more profitable and resilient operation. But taking my word for it or your word for it, is without that sort of clear sort of support is like, maybe you will, and that would be great, but probably not, and we, recognize that with a lot of humility. And so for us, we have had one program that we've been doing is some research with some universities across the country looking using remotely sensed data that we can see from satellites and quantifying the risk reducing benefit of soil health practices. And we've started with crop rotations, so the impact of more diversity. And this could even just be a shift away from, say, monocropping of corn, for 4 or 5 or 7 years in a row, to just some increase in rotation from corn to soy to wheat, say. Our initial findings have shown actually that an increase in diversity, especially in dry or more severe years, has shown not only some maintaining of yields, but even some very modest bumps, some increase in yields, which does run a little contrary to the idea that that there's only ever going to be a dip in periods of transition. Although we do want policies that protect producers in case there is a little bit of a dip there. We don't want to penalize inadvertently. So for us, seeing and expanding that initial research is really exciting. We also want to see USDA do its own research. Again, don't take my word for it, but look, into if and where and to what extent there is a benefit, a protection to crop yield loss because of the implementation of these practices. And then talking about market-based discounts, and this could come from the private sector or from federal crop insurance. If there is a risk reduction, then especially in crop insurance, especially with the businesses who are in the they're in the business of assessing risk, those folks we think should be offering some sort of discount on their crop insurance policies. And bless you, there is some some private sector sort of precedent for this. And I think a good example is on our health insurance policies. If you're a non-smoker, you get a non-smoker discount on your health insurance. And that's not because the insurance company is my friend or likes me or has some sort of like moral or philosophical judgment about smoking. It's just they've crunched the numbers and they know that that's lower risk. And so we think that there's a really strong case to be made for taking the risk reducing benefits of these soil health practices into account. And then, because crop insurance is something that so many producers need, if only to just be able to get access to capital and loans, let's meet the producers where they're at and extend discounts and incentives that are the kind of products that they're using all day, every day anyway, rather than say a new program that they have to sign up for that they might not otherwise be inclined to. So that's a lot of information, but that's some of where we think there's a lot of opportunity to go and a lot of room to work together politically as well.
Are there any specific benchmarks? Benchmark is maybe not the right word, but signposts or indicators that this is happening? Is there an insurance company which is starting to change that you can share publicly? Like what are you encouraged by that's already sort of public information that shows that this transition is happening?
Yeah, I think we have seen a handful of both banks or lenders as well as insurance, either brokers or companies starting to participate in these conversations. We've seen Compere Financial, which was an early partner for us, really looking at the different ways that these practices might reduce risk and ways that they might incorporate that into their operations. Their thinking on whether that's appraisal or loans or the impact that might have on crop insurance. And then I think we're starting to see other insurance brokers start to think about creating new, not just offering, but really developing new, whether it's like a captive or some other kind of innovative crop insurance product that either shares some of the risk and ownership or otherwise offers the producer a discount for implementing lower risk practices. So we're encouraged by that trend and that direction. There's still plenty of work to do, but I think the insurance companies themselves can identify the risk in the agriculture industry, better than anyone, or the reinsurance companies. They very much are calculating risk, and I think more and more folks are starting to look at land and sort of, quote unquote, nature-based solutions as a real both area of risk and then also area of opportunity to de-risk their portfolios. So we're excited by that and encourage more of that.
I like the term de-risk the portfolio. Well, so what's the role of government? I mean, the insurance agencies that's obviously private. The producers are private. But what's the role of government in here? What's the legislation that helps the insurance companies to de-risk their portfolio?
Yeah, well, and for folks who don't know, the federal crop insurance program does provide up to 60% of a farmer's crop insurance premium is covered by the government, by the taxpayer. So it's a lot of investment that we're already putting into this space, and there's a really sort of clear call from the agriculture community that crop insurance is an important risk management tool that folks want to see maintained or even increased and not taken away. And so with all of that in mind, we think that a sort of a long-term savings for the taxpayer, but more immediately a possible area of discount for producers is if USDA again does its own research into the risk reducing benefits and makes recommendations about where there could be risk reducing potential, and that could be county by county. It can and should be done in a sort of actuarially sound way. But we've certainly been encouraging policies in the Farm Bill, and to the extent that the risk management agency at USDA that oversees crop insurance with their existing authority, there are some ways that they can have been and can start to keep looking at that. So.
And does this necessarily have to be part of the Farm Bill? I mean, can the a big omnibus creature like that can this type of legislation sort of move forward a la carte, so to speak?
I think it's unlikely that we would see it as a standalone bill, but there can be some additional guidance that's given to the agency, even in some of the spending bills, or even just the risk management agency is a pretty small agency, so I think that there are staffing concerns and things like that of just making sure that folks can implement. But yeah, these are conversations that can happen in a variety of ways. It's not just one single bill opportunity.
Okay, well, we are coming up on the quarter of the hour, and we had agreed on a 45-minute session. So we really appreciate you being here. Do you have any sort of last minute either suggestions for people or or some sort of takeaway?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think again, just I really encourage folks to think about soil health and soil health policy as a fantastic way to build common ground, whether that's with your neighbor or your local conservation district board, or with a member of Congress. I think there's a lot that can be done there. And if you're interested in sort of following along but aren't quite ready to make this your day job, you can sign up for Lancor's monthly newsletter and follow along there. And as I mentioned, we also have some around quarterly bill tracker alerts that you can sign up for. So please kind of follow along with us, and also write to us, if there's an issue that we can help digest, or a resource that you think we should be considering, or a farmer that you'd love for us to speak to. Our door is really open in that way. So please be in touch, and I think staying in touch with this community as well is a great way to stay involved.
Great. Well, Aria, thank you so much. And again, I just want to remind people we're Soil for Climate, and we advocate for soil restoration as a climate solution, but we've now augmented that as a food security solution and as a social welfare solution. I mean, it's an everything solution. So regardless on how you feel about climate, we're all joined in the need for research and communications around healthy soil. So feel free to check out Soil for Climate as well as Landcore, Aria's organization. Okay, again, Aria, thank you so much. This has really been wonderful. Oh, Carl, Carl was texting me. His internet went out, but he just came back. Carl, welcome back. Let me give you the last word, and then we'll sign off here.
The last word, I guess, would be, Aria, it's great to see you, and I'd love to learn more about perhaps some of the more innovative pieces of legislation, the more inspired stuff, off the beaten track. And if there's anything that Seth and I can do to help, promote this legislation going forward and to draw attention to ideas that maybe aren't getting enough attention as much as they should, then, we would be happy to help sort of push the boulder up the hill alongside you.
Thank you. We so appreciate that. And thank you both for the time. It's such a pleasure.
Great.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. And this recording will be saved and put up on YouTube sometime in the next few days.
Terrific.
All right.
Thanks,
Okay.
everyone.
Take
All right,
care.
take care,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Okay, bye-bye.